Here is a massive, shocking contradiction that is going to completely change how you look at the people around you. The absolute nicest guy you know, the one who's always doing favors, never starts an argument, and bends over backward for everyone, is actually highly likely to be one of the most dishonest and manipulative people in the room. I know it sounds impossible, right? You probably know someone exactly like this, or maybe you've even recognized some of these traits in yourself. But the psychology behind this hidden manipulation is wild. And today, we're going to unpack exactly why this happens. We're diving into this explainer because it completely shatters a deeply held societal myth. Literally, since childhood, we are conditioned to believe that being a selfless, perfectly agreeable good guy guarantees a problem-free life, effortless love, and just universal appreciation from everyone around us. But based on thousands of hours of clinical therapy by Dr. Robert Glover, the reality is the exact opposite. Being universally nice doesn't actually lead to happiness. In fact, it's almost always a recipe for quiet, festering misery. So this brings up a pretty powerful question. Why on earth do men who pride themselves on being endlessly helpful and generous so often end up chronically frustrated, isolated, and stuck in unfulfilling relationships? I mean, they seemingly do everything right, right? They check all the traditional boxes. They listen, they provide, they compromise, yet they constantly feel like they're getting the short end of the stick. They watch other, supposedly worse people effortlessly get what they want, while the nice guy just builds up this invisible wall of total bitterness. Dr. Glover calls this specific pattern the nice guy syndrome. And here is the profound realization. This isn't actually about genuine kindness at all, not even a little bit. It's a deeply ingrained, completely flawed life script. It's the core belief that if a man is just good, giving, and caring enough, he's basically going to be automatically rewarded by the universe. He assumes his needs will just magically be met without him ever having to directly ask for them. It essentially turns self-sacrifice into a silent, intense expectation of a reward. And really, the nice guy persona is exactly that. It's just a mask, because these men suppress their true feelings, hide their mistakes, and entirely ignore their own needs just to avoid rocking the boat. Their repressed energy doesn't just politely vanish into thin air. It simmers. It builds immense pressure right beneath the surface, and eventually, that frustration oozes out in highly toxic, unexpected ways that actively push people away. When you actually peel back that mask, what you find is a cluster of not-so-nice traits. Instead of being genuinely nice, they are fundamentally dishonest, mostly because they constantly hide absolutely anything that might cause a fight, even tiny harmless truths. They become secretive, they are incredibly controlling, trying to micromanage their partners and their environments just to keep things perfectly smooth. And because they are absolutely terrified of direct confrontation, that internal pressure cooker inevitably boils over into pure passive aggressiveness and repressed rage. But here's where things get interesting. Let's look at the covert contract trap and the hidden cost of giving. How does this toxicity actually play out day to day? Well, it doesn't look like aggressive control on the surface. Instead, this entire dynamic operates on a deeply hidden transactional system that completely destroys any chance at true intimacy. There is a very specific three-step formula to what Dr. Glover calls the covert contract. Step 1, I do this for you. Step 2, you do this for me. Step 3, and this is the kicker, we both pretend there is no contract at all. Think of a husband silently keeping a mental scoreboard of household chores, like, vacuuming and doing the dishes, and then secretly expecting physical affection in return. He gives to get, but he never, ever directly states what he actually wants, which sets literally everyone up for failure. When those unspoken, entirely invisible expectations inevitably aren't met, it kicks off a chronological cycle known as the victim triangle. It usually starts with intense people-pleasing over a period of days. Then, over the coming weeks, this turns into unmet expectations and silent building resentment. Finally, months down the line, it culminates in a sudden, passive-aggressive explosion. The nice guy blows up, leaving his partner totally confused. Then, overwhelmed by guilt for blowing up, he doubles down on the people-pleasing, and the whole exhausting cycle just resets itself. So, to truly deconstruct this, we can't just look at adult relationships. We need to understand the origin of the syndrome and the root of toxic shame. We actually have to trace this emotional map all the way back to childhood to figure out where this incredibly flawed coping mechanism even comes from. What we find is that every nice guy internalized a profound sense of toxic shame early on in life. This is a deeply rooted, completely false belief, often born from feeling emotionally or physically abandoned as a kid, that it simply wasn't safe or acceptable to be their authentic selves. They felt fundamentally flawed. So to survive and get love, they learned a mechanism. Hide your flaws, become a chameleon, and mold yourself into whatever you think your parents, teachers, or partners want you to be. And that childhood coping mechanism leads straight into a massive mistake in adulthood, becoming the Teflon man, which is basically the paradox of hiding. They operate under the absolute delusion that aggressively hiding their human flaws and projecting this frictionless image of perfection will somehow make them more lovable. So here's the paradox. By making themselves completely smooth, totally agreeable, and mistake-free to avoid judgment, nice guys inadvertently become, well, slippery and lifeless. Emotionally, they're impossible to connect with because nothing sticks to them. They have no strong opinions, no real boundaries. But here's the truth. Human beings don't connect with perfection. We connect with authenticity. A truly integrated person embraces their rough edges and freely admits mistakes, and it's that exact vulnerability that naturally draws deep, intimate connection. You really see this show up when you compare caretaking with genuine caring. Caretaking, actually scratch that, it's more like toxic caretaking, which is the hallmark of the nice guy, is motivated entirely by emptiness and fear. It always has unconscious strings attached, and its real focus is fixing others just so the nice guy can feel secure in his own environment. Genuine caring, on the other hand, comes from a place of total abundance. It has absolutely no strings attached, and it focuses purely on giving what the other person actually needs, demanding absolutely nothing in return. Once you see the trap of the covert contract and the isolation of the Teflon man, how do you actually escape? That brings us to reclaiming your personal power and becoming the integrated male. And the way out isn't swinging to the other extreme and becoming a selfish jerk. It's about evolving. There's a quote from Dr. Glover that hits incredibly hard. No one was put on this planet to meet your needs. Now, for a nice guy who is entirely used to covertly giving just to get, hearing that truth is completely terrifying, but it's also entirely liberating. It forces the realization that an integrated male stops playing the helpless victim waiting to be rescued. He takes radical, unapologetic responsibility for fulfilling his own life, his own happiness, and directly asking for what he wants. This before and after transformation requires a complete paradigm shift. The integrated male sets strong, rigid boundaries instead of just saying yes to everything out of fear. He expresses intense feelings honestly, even when he knows for a fact it might cause a fight. He completely surrenders the illusion that he can somehow control reality by being perfect. He freely embraces his mistakes, and most importantly, he stops the exhausting cycle of seeking a partner's approval and finally makes his own needs a true priority. To break this psychological cycle right now, I have a final challenge for you. I want you to do something totally counterintuitive today. Put your own needs first. Ask directly for exactly what you want, without any covert contracts, without any apologies, and just sit with that uncomfortable cognitive dissonance, that creeping feeling of guilt or fear you might experience. Let it happen. Endure it. Because pushing through that intense discomfort is the very first real step to reclaiming your power and stepping into genuine freedom.